Hey there, race fans. It's race day. Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Doubleheader weekend at the Monster Mile in Dover, Delaware. Miles, he'll just grab up and get ya. You're caught in his wrath. There's nothing you can do. But only 2 people this weekend, the victors, were able to escape Miles the Monster's wrath in what was a very interesting and exciting weekend in the world of motorsports, not just for NASCAR itself, but also in the IndyCar series. Let's talk about it all. Number 1, Denny Hamlin continuing to show his dominance and his drive to win that first ever Cup championship. Captured the first Dover race on Saturday, the Drydene 311, winning it over his teammates Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, championship rival Kevin Harvick, and Chase Elliott. Denny Hamlin was just so dominant in yesterday's first race at Dover, and he's been so good this year. I mean, all the wins and the playoff points he's accumulated makes him clearly one of the favorites for the championship this year. He swept all 3 stages, he led the most laps, and had a nice battle at the end with his teammate Martin Truex Jr., who's looking to win his second race of the season, but Denny Hamlin just kept closing on Truex the last couple of laps after the beginning of stage 3. He didn't get such a good restart compared to what Truex did. Hamlin clawed his way back and raced hard with Truex at the very end, as Truex's car was so loose he couldn't hang on to it, and Denny Hamlin got the better of him off of the corner, took the lead away, and drove away to get another big win for him this season. I mean, this is possibly, again, the year for Denny Hamlin with all the wins he's had, all the playoff points. We talked about last year was probably the best year he's ever had. This might be even better considering what he's been able to accomplish, especially with no practice and qualifying at these races that we're going to. And Denny Hamlin, Chris Gabehart, they can carry this momentum towards the playoffs, keep it going. They will be in the championship 4 by the time we get to Phoenix in November. Number 2, Kevin Harvick, the other rival for Denny Hamlin, captured today's second race at Dover, the other Drydene 311. They were both named the Drydene 311 this weekend. Harvick captured today's win, winning all 3 stages over Martin Truex Jr., Jimmy Johnson, William Byron, and Alex Bowman. Just like Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick himself is showing his dominance for this year, leading the most laps, winning all 3 stages today. He picked up the 700th win for Ford, and also today, Kevin Harvick clinched the regular season championship, which means, along with the stage wins, which was 2 apiece, and the 5 bonus points for winning today's race, he picked up another 15 bonus points with being the regular season champion. I mean, this all but guarantees Kevin Harvick's going to make it to the round of 16 and probably the round of 12 as well. Harvick and Hamlin, they're just having a nice battle back and forth almost every weekend. And all these doubleheader weekends we've had this year, it seems like those 2 are always battling it out for the win. And they have so much respect for each other in this great rivalry between who's better as far as wins and playoff points. This is a great battle between Harvick and Hamlin, and it's going to go down to the checkered flag at Phoenix. And both of them are really good there. Of course, we all know how good Kevin Harvick is, and lately Denny Hamlin's been running so well there. Why can't we see both of them battling for it when it comes down to the final 5 to 10 laps? These 2 are just absolutely dominating 2020, and they're going to continue to do that when we get to these playoffs. Number 3, Martin Truex Jr., very solid weekend. Both races, so close, but no cigar. 2 second-place finishes for Martin Truex Jr. After the last couple of weeks, he finished 3rd. I think he's like 3, 4, 5 races in a row he finished in 3rd place, and then this weekend at Dover, a track where he's been so successful in the past, of course, is the track where he got his first career win in the Cup Series back in 2007, where I happened to be there for that race on the day that we lost the great Bill France Jr. Martin Truex Jr., so close again to victory. Looked like he had it yesterday, but again, getting loose at the end, and Hamlin being able to catch up and pass him kind of hurt Truex. Truex was really good today, but he wasn't on the same level as Kevin Harvick was. Truex, though, still putting up good results, and even though he only has the 1 win, he has been looking so competitive to win his second race of the season, and it possibly could come at the playoffs, and this first round could benefit him because he's won at these tracks in Darlington and Richmond. So a second win for Martin Truex Jr. is coming, and it probably will be in the playoffs. The question is, when will it happen? So Martin Truex Jr. fans, stay optimistic. Even though Harvick and Hamlin are clearly the 2 favorites, Truex fans should be optimistic about how good they've been running lately with all these top 5 finishes. It's only a matter of time before they get win number 2 and put themselves in the conversation to be a contender for the championship by the time we get to Phoenix. Number 4, Jimmy Johnson, his final 2 races at the track where he has been so dominant. Literally, he's the king of Dover. 11 wins at that facility. Like, half of the races I've gone to Dover, he's been in victory circle. That's how good Jimmy Johnson is. and he needed to come into both races this weekend to make a big gain as far as the playoff cut line because he came in below the playoff cut line. Well, in Saturday's race, Jimmie Johnson showed good race pace the entire day, staying up there, earning some stage points, and coming away with a nice 7th place finish. And at the end of the race, compared to his teammate, which I'll talk about in the playoff bubble a little bit later, Jimmie Johnson was 3 points above the cut line after yesterday's race. Today, he also had good pace. But early in the race, his pit crew made a mistake at the beginning of stage 2 where they got caught for speeding and they had to restart the tail and longs line and they had to continue to play catch up the entire day. They did score some stage points in both stages, but it wasn't enough compared to what his other teammate did, William Byron, which I'll talk about that a little bit later. And late in the race, with about 25 laps to go, a caution comes out. Jimmie Johnson's crew chief, Cliff Daniels, decides to gamble while running in the top 5. They gambled to take 2 tires instead of 4 compared to everybody else to take that chance to go for the victory. It was a gutsy call, but it was worth the call because Jimmie got a good restart, but unfortunately Kevin Harvick on the 4 fresh tires caught up to Jimmie Johnson, passed him, and just took off, and Jimmie had to settle for a 3rd place finish. And because of his teammate getting more points than he did, he's now back below the cutoff line, but only by 4 points, which can be made up. Although, I'll talk about that track that we're going to next weekend, which will decide who's going to make the playoffs and who isn't. But for Jimmie Johnson's final 2 races in Dover, a 7th and a 3rd, and gaining more points to get closer to being above the cut line, I'd say it was a solid, wonderful way to end what has been a tremendous career for Jimmie Johnson at Dover International Speedway. We're going to miss him, obviously dominating, although some people back in the days were probably just like, oh gosh, here we go, another Jimmie Johnson victory at Dover. Well, you reflect back on those memories and you will see how good he was at that track. And this was a good weekend too. A good couple races this weekend for him to end what has been a tremendous career for him at this facility. And number 5, the playoff bubble. So we have 1 race left to go. And it's basically 3 spots up for grabs. So before the race today, 10 drivers already on a wins. We already know those 10 drivers that had won this year. They're already in the playoffs. 3 more drivers clinched today on points. Eric Almirola, Kyle Busch, and older brother Kurt Busch. I mean, they had a comfortable margin above the cut line, so they were totally fine. Clint Bowyer hasn't clinched yet, but he's only 57 points above the cut line. I don't think there's going to be a big disaster for him next weekend where he could find himself out. He should probably clinch by the end of stage 1 or stage 2, depending on how the points go. But Clint Bowyer fans, don't think there's any need to panic. 57 points, you're probably going to be locked in by the middle of the race this upcoming weekend. But 15th through 17th, it is tight. Matt DiBenedetto did not really have a good weekend whatsoever. Finished outside the top 10 in both races. He's 9 points above the cut line. A couple races ago, he was plus 50. Now he's 9 points above the cut line because he hadn't been running well lately compared to the other guys. William Byron, Saturday, didn't really run well, and he was angry over the radio, especially with his crew chief checking out. So he was an 11-time Dover winner as a crew chief, and we all know who those 11 wins came with, Jimmie Johnson. Jimmie had a good day Saturday. Sunday, both Jimmie and Byron went well, but Byron had more stage points than Jimmie. Byron went from crap on Saturday to basically putting in a superb effort today, and also, by the way, picking up his first top 5 of the season, which couldn't come at a better time, considering how close we are as far as his playoff cut line. And we're going into next weekend's race where anybody can win. I'll tell you why at the end of the video. But Matt DiBenedetto, 9 points above the cut line, I'm worried about him. Byron and Johnson may be vying for the last spot, but there's a chance they could elevate themselves ahead of DiBenedetto on points, pending we don't get a new winner. But for everybody below, from Eric Jones all the way down to 30th, it's basically must win or your dreams of making the playoffs are just wiped out. So it's going to be a very interesting weekend at the upcoming race to decide who will make the playoffs and who will be left on the outside looking in. Finally, driver recap, Chase Elliott. Saturday's race yesterday, very good race. Started on the pole based off the win from the road course last weekend at Daytona, having the fastest lap, leading the most laps, having one of the best cars. Started the pole yesterday, led the first 28 laps. Then on one of the restarts, we got some contact with Clint Bowyer, and we were afraid it was going to cut the tire. Thankfully, it didn't. We pitted, fixed the fender, drove our way back to the top 10, and then was able to come away with a nice 5th place finish, which is good. Today, not much to say. Obviously, lap 8 early on, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. gets bumped from behind by Joey Logano. Everybody started checking up. Kyle Busch checked up too hard. Elliott couldn't slow down, and Elliott ran to the back of Kyle Busch. I blame a lot of those guys for not checking up soon enough. It was just just sucks. We didn't finish the race 39th, but, I mean, we have the 2 wins. We have the 16 playoff points going into the playoffs, so it's not a big loss, but at the same time, as great as Chase has been at the track, I don't know why these last, this year and last year, I don't know why the second Dover race is kicking us in the butt. I don't know. We got to figure it out, but still, happy with yesterday's race. Not so much today, but you know what? Just blow it by and just go on to the next race. Really quick before I get into next weekend's event, decide who's going to make the playoffs. We had the Indianapolis 500 today, of course, being postponed from the month of May to August because of the global pandemic. No fans were allowed, sadly, and it's tough because Roger Penske, who owns Team Penske and the Cup, Xfinity, and IndyCar Series, his first race as the new owner of that track, opened up today. He gave the command, promised there will be fans next year, and I think there will be. All in all, a really good Indy 500 today. A lot of, passing on the restarts, a lot of jockeying for position. At the end of the day, Takuma Sato picks up his second Indianapolis 500 victory, winning it over the dominant car and Scott Dixon. Teammate Graham Rahal, whose father owns the team cars for Sato and Rahal, got third. Santino Ferrucci fourth, and my boy Joseph Newgarden got a fifth place out of it. A lot of hard crashes, though, today. There were a lot of scary crashes. That Oliver Askew off at turn 4 coming to a restart. We had Alexander Rossi, who got himself penalized for an unsafe release, making contact with Sato. He got caught back in the traffic and got loose off a 2 and hit the wall. Marcus Ericsson had a hard crash, but the scariest crash was literally what called the race with 5 laps to go and wasn't enough time to clean up was Sato and Rahal's teammate Spencer Pigot literally crashed so hard into the barriers entering the pits off of turn 4, which ultimately called the race with 5 laps to go. There wasn't enough time to clean up, and there's really wasn't enough time to clean up. But all in all, I thought it was a good race. A little crazy with all those big wrecks, but thankfully nobody was hurt. Pigot was okay, although he kind of laid on his back afterwards because that was a pretty ugly crash, but thankfully nothing serious as far as I know. So sending a little bit of prayer to Pigot, and hopefully he's okay. And congrats to Takuma Sato, second Indy 500 victory, but still nobody made a cut as far as Dixon in the championship with him leading the most laps and finishing second. Nobody made a big, gap to get up to his championship lead, although Joseph Newgarden, now second in the points, 84 back, still a couple races left to go in the IndyCar season. I know I don't talk a lot about IndyCar, but I have to address the Indy 500 because it's one of the most important races in all of motorsports, and it has to be talked about, and obviously perfect time to do it when it was ran today, while Cup and Xfinity had 2 doubleheader weekends. All in all, pretty interesting weekend for motorsports itself. So, next Saturday night, this upcoming Saturday night, the last race to make the playoffs at Daytona, under the lights. Yes, in the past, it's 4th of July weekend. Now, it's the last race to make the playoffs. It's part of the schedule change this year, before the pandemic, obviously. But now we come into a race where anybody can win. But the big problem is, if you're trying to make the playoffs, can you avoid the big one? That is going to be a big topic of conversation. Who will be in? Will Jimmy Johnson make it in his final season in NASCAR, or will somebody way down in points like Eric Jones, who won this race before, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who won this race before, Matt Kenseth, the former champ who didn't even come in until after the pandemic, or will Ryan Newman, back at the track where he had that scary crash earlier this year, get a little revenge? We shall see. Tune in to what should be a fireworks extravaganza under the lights at Daytona this upcoming Saturday night in the Coke Zero Sugar 400. So subscribe, like, congrats to Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick on sweeping both the Dover races this weekend. Congratulations again to Takuma Sato in the Indy 500 victory. Hope you have a wonderful week leading up to the playoffs. One more to go, baby. Who makes it? Time to find out. Until then, have a good night and have a wonderful, safe week.